For many years, I worked on the design and qualification of instrumentation for use in the safety systems in nuclear power plants. Now, this is fairly important because when an accident happens in a power plant, you're counting on this equipment to safely shut down the power plant. Now, the equipment that I worked on the design of, as far as I know, always worked during accidents. That doesn't mean that anything safe happened during the meltdowns, but at least it wasn't my fault, which is about all you can say about anything, I guess, in your own defense. One of the things we had to do for this test was to take the equipment and expose it to very high levels of radiation, which, since they weren't doing above ground atomic bomb testing at the time, again, this was the late 1970s, early 1980s, the only source of radiation were a couple of locations in America. One was in New Jersey, and the other was in West Memphis, Arkansas. We went to the West Memphis, Arkansas facility. Now, both of these had been built not to test equipment, but to irradiate chickens, because the people who built these were absolutely sure that it was going to be approved by the FDA that you could have irradiated chickens and then not have to refrigerate the meat, because it would never spoil because all the bacteria had been killed off by the radiation. Now, in this era where people are worried about genetically modified crops, you wonder how anybody would have ever bought radiated chickens. They're still not approved by the FDA, by the way. I don't know whatever happened to this radiation facility in West Memphis, Arkansas. And it was built there, by the way, not just because it was out in the country amongst sharecroppers, but also because it was very close to chicken production plants. Well, this radiation test involved continuous radiation for several days, about 3 days, day and night, and the radiation source was down in about 30 feet of water. When you were in the room, it would have this strange blue glow, like a science fiction movie. And you got out of the room, and then they lifted this source up, and if you were lucky, your equipment didn't stop working immediately. But there was one other person with me. The company I worked for was always running very low on manpower. They did not hire people they didn't need. So there were two of us to run this 3-day all around the clock test, which means you had 12 hours on and 12 hours off. And during my 12 hours off, which was during the daytime, I'd have to put up a do not disturb sign on the door. And in fact, we shared the same room because there were never two of us there at the same time. But I also drove around and looked at a little bit of the really strange country to the west of Memphis, Tennessee. I went to a city called Mound City because I'll go to any city named Mound City just to look at the mounds. And sure enough, there were some mounds there, but I never found out anything more about them. Well, the test was about over. It was, I went to get a soda at the machine or something, and there was a heated argument going on in an office. Between the owner, between the guy manager and his bookkeeper, and the bookkeeper was saying that she'd gone over the book several times, and absolutely true, there was a couple of $100,000 missing. And the manager said, no, that can't be, that can't be. Well, I didn't want to, I really tiptoed out of there because the obvious next thing that would happen is that the bookkeeper's going to get murdered, and I didn't want to get involved with it. Cowardly on my part, maybe, but I had enough things to worry about with radiation. So, that's the story.